My name is Irene Hewlett. I'm 32 years old, and 5 years ago, my entire life was erased by a lie I didn't even know existed until it was too late to defend myself. My sister told my parents I had dropped out of medical school, and in a family that always trusted her version of reality over mine, that was all it took for them to cut me off completely. No calls, no questions, no chance to explain, just silence so absolute it felt like I had died while still breathing. They blocked my number, returned my letters unopened, ignored my emails, and when I graduated, got married, and built a life from nothing, they weren't there. Not once. And for 5 years, I lived as if I had no parents, no past, no place I came from, only the future I forced myself to create. The truth was far less dramatic than the lie. I hadn't dropped out. I had taken a formal leave of absence during my 3rd year to care for my best friend Sarah, who was dying of stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And I stayed with her through every chemo session, every sleepless night, every moment until the end, holding her hand as she took her last breath. And then, with no family left to support me and no one to lean on, I went back. Finished medical school, survived residency, and built myself into something no one could deny, even if they never saw it. During those years, I worked relentlessly, not out of revenge, but because there was no other option, because stopping meant collapsing under the weight of everything I had lost. And slowly, piece by piece, I built a life that didn't include the people who had once defined me. I found mentors who believed in me, friends who stood by me, and eventually a man who loved me without conditions. And for the first time, I understood that family isn't always who you're born to. Sometimes it's who chooses to stay. By the time I turned 32, I was the chief of trauma surgery at one of the busiest hospitals in the state, respected, stable, and living a life I had created entirely on my own. But even then, there was always a quiet space inside me where my family used to be, a kind of absence that never fully disappears, no matter how much you fill your life with everything else. Then one night, everything changed in the most unexpected way imaginable. My pager went off at 3 a.m., a severe trauma case, a woman in critical condition after a car accident. And as I prepared for surgery, I glanced at the patient chart and saw a name I hadn't spoken out loud in 5 years. Monica Hewlett, my sister, the same sister whose lie had destroyed my life. For a moment, the world stopped. The past collided with the present, and I had to decide whether I was going to be a surgeon or a sister, whether I would let my anger dictate my actions or uphold the oath I had built my life around. And in the end, there was no real choice, because the patient on that table wasn't just my sister. She was a human being who needed saving, and I was the one best equipped to do it. The surgery lasted nearly 4 hours. Her injuries were severe: a ruptured spleen, a damaged liver, internal bleeding that would have killed her within minutes without intervention. But my hands didn't shake, my focus didn't break, and when it was over, she was alive because I chose to do my job, not because she deserved it, not because I forgave her, but because that's who I had become. When I walked into the waiting room afterward, still in my scrubs, I saw my parents for the first time in 5 years, and the look on their faces when they realized who I was, what I had become, and what I had just done for their daughter was something I will never forget. It wasn't just shock, it was the collapse of everything they had believed, every lie they had accepted without question, every moment they had chosen not to listen to me. And in that silence, the truth finally spoke louder than anything I could have said. They tried to apologize, of course. They tried to explain, to justify, to make sense of 5 years of absence in a few broken sentences. But I didn't let them rewrite history. I told them the facts, calmly, clearly, without anger, because anger wasn't necessary anymore. The truth was enough. And for the first time in my life, they had no choice but to hear it. What followed wasn't immediate forgiveness or a dramatic reconciliation. It was something much slower, much more real. My sister eventually admitted everything, not because she wanted to, but because she had no other option left, and my parents were forced to confront the reality that they had abandoned their daughter without ever asking for her side of the story. I didn't slam the door on them, but I didn't open it fully either. I set boundaries, real ones, the kind that don't bend under guilt or pressure, and I made it clear that if they wanted to be part of my life again, it would be on my terms, not theirs. Rebuilding something after that kind of damage isn't about big gestures. It's about consistency, accountability, and time. And even now, it's not perfect. It never will be, but it's real. And real is something I didn't have for a very long time. The most important thing I learned through all of this wasn't about revenge or justice. It was about identity, about understanding that your worth isn't defined by who believes in you, but by who you choose to become when no one does. I didn't need to prove anything to my family in the end. I proved it to myself. And when the truth finally surfaced, it didn't need my help to be seen. It stood on its own, undeniable and unshakable. Today, I live a life I built from the ground up, with people who showed up when it mattered. And while I am slowly learning to let my parents back into that life, I do it with clarity, not obligation, because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean returning to who you used to be. It means choosing how much space someone gets in the person you've become. If there's anything my story proves, it's that the truth may take time, sometimes years, but it never disappears. And when it finally arrives, it has a way of changing everything, not through force, but through the quiet, undeniable power of simply being real.